Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure.
What do you hope to accomplish as chair on the Commission on Population and Development, and what is your message?
It's an honor for Honduras to chair the commission on this particular year, which is the 30th anniversary. I'm very honored to have that role. The main takeaway for me is that the issues of the Cairo agenda, as we call it, which are issues of demographic change, are issues of aging, climate change, sustainable development, financing, they are all as relevant as they were 30 years ago, and they can provide solutions for the sustainable development goals, and they can be a beacon towards the Summit of the Future, which is coming up in September.
There are some very big numbers. A recent headline by the medical journal Lancet says that dramatic declines in global fertility rates set to transform global population patterns by the year 2100. What are some of the issues that come along with that?
So there's this enormous demographic transition, and in all regions of the world, some like sub-Saharan Africa and some in Latin America still have very large adolescent and youth populations. But in general, the world is aging, and we need to make sure that we focus on the economy of support or the matter of care for those aging populations, because the care of young people, of elderly people, usually falls on women. So it's also an issue of gender equality. We need to make sure that there's policies that balance that care towards older populations. It's also an enormous opportunity because, of course, it's a success of 30 years that now people live longer and that there's lower fertility and that people have the family structures that they want to have.
We're also seeing some population and migration shifts as a result of climate change in some regions. Farmers are being impacted, which also leads to food insecurity. They can't make a living. How is all of that being addressed?
Climate change now, which is a reality, and the severity of climate conditions is a reality, and it is one of the factors that motivate people to migrate. In Central America, for example, where Honduras is seated, we have what is called a dry corridor, which just means that there's very arid land, and that has caused a lot of impact on agriculture. It makes farmers reevaluate what they can do, because if they can't grow their crops anymore, they migrate to the urban centers, but also migrate out of the country. So as the tropical areas get hotter, people will start to move for these very reasons.
Much of what you do involves improving the lives of women and girls. Honduras, as we know, has a female president. You are involved in higher political office and public service. Talk to us a little bit about your path and what advice you have for young women hoping to do what you do.
Yes, and I'm very proud of having one of the only 26 female heads of state or government in the world. So Honduras, President Xiomara Castro is one of 26 in the entire world. And it is a real inspiration to women and girls, especially in Honduras, when you look at her and say, I can be the president someday. And I myself have followed the path of the generations before me in Honduras who gave me equal opportunities. I think the young women's movement is something that we need to keep a close eye on and nurture and make sure that they have opportunities and education, because they will be the ones that can bring the world forward.
Honduras and China recently celebrated 1 year of establishing diplomatic relations. President Castro visited China as well. Things are off to a pretty fast start. We saw this multi-million-dollar infrastructure deal agreed between both countries recently. Is this just the beginning? Talk to us about ties and how they're progressing.
This is a wonderful opportunity for both countries. It's a great decision that was made by President Castro, Foreign Minister Enrique Reina. It's based on our principles of foreign policy of sovereignty, a foreign policy of collaboration, much like the Chinese foreign policy. We are extremely happy to be partners with China. We established these relations based on the One China principle, which we fully believe in. And I think that there's a lot for both countries. For us, China, just by the size and the opportunities that it offers, it can help us develop so much. But also China in Honduras can see a friend that opens the doors to other Latin American countries. And that's what the relationship has been. I'm the deputy head of mission at the embassy in Beijing. And as soon as I finish the CPD, I will be going back to Beijing. And I have been there already, and it's truly exciting to see that relationship consolidate itself. And I think it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for both countries going forward.
You mentioned both countries learning and taking things from each other. When you set that against what the United Nations offers and the size of the countries and multilateralism, how does that play a role?
I think also the multilateral system is the only option that we have to look at these world problems like what we were talking about, migration and climate change, because it's the fact that one country, one vote, and we all sit here together and can have a conversation about how to address those challenges. It's the only way. Migration doesn't, it's a trans-border issue. It requires the international community. Climate change does not know borders. So the United Nations is key, and then having partners like China, who clearly, China is a very powerful country in the world, but also in the United Nations. It's one of the permanent 5 members. It's a very big country, but their friendship towards us enables us to also be more representative and to have a better role, because we have that friendship with China, which is based on respect. It's a very respectful relationship on the side of China towards Honduras.
Ambassador Espinoza, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity.